Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everyone. We will start the broadcast in about 5 minutes for this webinar. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in 5 minutes to start the webinar. Thank you. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everyone. We have people joining us from as far as Australia and South America today, so we're in very different time zones. Thank you very much for joining us today to this webinar on shopper marketing topic called Building an Engaging Category Story: How to Differentiate Your Touchpoint Activation against competitors and make your marketing spend more effective. I hope you can all see the screen, and as we will go through, we have about 45 minutes of a presentation, and then we have some 5 or 10 minutes to spare for you to ask questions directly to ourselves. Thank you very much for joining us again, and we will start the session now. Thank you for listening. My name is Martin Formstein. I'm the Managing Director of the Shopsumer Institute. We are a specialized consulting company in the area of shopper marketing, category management, and retail marketing. Well, first of all, I want to present the agenda, which is number one, why do we need a category story at all? Secondly, we will see some facts and figures on Shopsumer engagement today from the point of sale. Thirdly, we'll talk directly about our methodology, which we call the category story sheet. And finally, we'll close with some 5 golden rules on building an engaging category story. Just a few words on our company. Who are we? Our vision is to find new, exciting, and efficient ways to increase Shopsumer engagement with your brand. We are a privately held company founded in 2007 in Barcelona, which is where we're headquartered. We're 10 expert consultants across Europe, but work also overseas. That is a little extract of the countries that we worked in before, and please visit our website, theshopsumerinstitute.com, for more information and some extra downloads that you can take away on specific topics in the area of shopper marketing. Well, here are some of the clients that we work for. So pretty much we're talking about the top companies in consumer goods, retail, etc. Why do we need a category story to start off the topic of today? Well, first of all, let me quote some small figures here. 70% of consumers don't trust recommendations of family and friends. So 70% really listen to what you have to say directly to them about products, retail companies, stores, etc. Whereas only 19% of conversations on brands are prompted by TV advertising or in the store. People are not that reactive to, let's say, the professional institutions in this world, advertising as well as stores. So just creating the right products for what people will need in the future is not enough. It is the way you set the scene for them in whatever way that is relevant to Shopsumers. That is really what this is all about. If you don't tell a story, nobody cares. And there's a nice quote here from Jeff Bezos on this. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That is really quite symptomatic for today's situation. There's a lot of talk going on behind your back on your brand. We talked about this in our first webinar 3 months ago when we called it nearness to the power of 3, which is really that people are always connected to you and they want personalized service. Adapting to and molding the path to purchase, that is really what the category story is about. You want to create a story that impacts at the different touch points of the path to purchase through certain activation variables, and that really makes a difference to the Shopsumer in the end. Your category story needs to follow the most relevant touch points of the path to purchase, but at the same time find ways to activate the Shopsumer in a unique and different way compared to your competitors. So remember the short definition that we gave on shopper marketing last time. Shopper marketing is the detailed definition of specific marketing tasks after defining the product offer and positioning to be carried out at the relevant touchpoints along the Shopsumer's path to purchase with the aim to A. Maximize Shopsumer engagement and brand loyalty, B. Maximize efficiency of investments through differentiation from competitors, and C. While reaching the company's sales and profit targets. So it puts you into the picture. The category story really needs to achieve all these three goals: maximize Shopsumer engagement, maximize efficiency of your investments, and still reach the targets of your company. So some facts and figures on Shopsumer engagement. And first of all, I need to give a little thank you to Shopper Intelligence, a company that we work with very closely, who gave us some data on this, which we will come to in a minute. Retail channels are dead, as we say, because beforehand we talked about a group of similar competing retailers carrying similar assortments of products, attempting to serve similar consumer segments or groups. This is what we did in the past, and this is how current how the current retail landscape really looks like. It is pretty much about competing for the same type of Shopsumer. Right? So the definition of a retail channel, from our point of view, is by itself obsolete because it was trying to play in favor of a simplistic categorization model in the Shopsumer's head, which he needed to select to the appropriate retail environment because of the logistical hassle he had to incur in to use it. Beforehand, we had to go to stores. There was no other alternative. But now, technology-enabled, personalized, mobile, interactive shopper experience that differentiate beyond product and price are absolutely important. Retail channels are no longer made up by the professional institutions, by manufacturers and retailers. They are made up by the Shopsumer himself. So all that matters to Shopsumer's unique retail experience that successfully relates to his individual interests and needs, taking his customer lifetime value into account, of course. So we need to bear in mind that we want to have loyal customers over time because they are the most profitable ones for us. Online retailers can offer a lot of that, but not all. Really, as you might have seen recently in the news, Amazon Dash launched this product, which is simply a recorder and a barcode reader that helps you organize your shopping. And on top of that, they now launched this little product, which is a simple button that is connected to this device and helps you helps you effect a purchasing order directly to your retailer, in that case Amazon. So you just push the button and you get the right amount of product that you have stipulated before delivered to your home. Of course, that is a lot of that unique retail experience. It's very personalized. But on the other hand, it will not at all win against the other example that we show to you here, which is the need for a Shopsumer to have a different kind of product retail experience, by just buying products in bulk. So everything that is sold in this store, which was recently opened in Berlin, is just sold in bulk. You can't buy bags or any wrapped products in there. Everything has to go into the containers that you yourself can bring to the store or can acquire directly at the store as well. So there's very different retail experience that you can give to a very special kind of Shopsumer target. Well, as I said, thanks a lot to people at Shopper Intelligence who provided us some data on this. we will use some of their real data, mostly UK data, to illustrate the case of the importance of tracking and measuring Shopsumer satisfaction to design a better Shopsumer activation strategy. Shopper intelligence is a syndicated quantitative study of shopper perceptions and evaluations that already runs in Australia, UK, and France, soon in the USA, Canada, Germany, and the Netherlands. It's about 150 shoppers who give their opinion on their purchase in one category and one retailer in over 100 categories. So you have benchmarking across categories, retailers, brands, and time in the data. Well, let's have a look at some first data here. Even today, Shopsumers are relatively easy to satisfy because in Shopper Intelligence, they also analyze the net, let's say net satisfaction score or net promoter score, if you will, which is simply the answer to the question, were you satisfied? How was your overall degree of satisfaction with the purchase that you made at that particular retailer in a particular category? Well, as we can see in the UK, Shopsumers are extremely satisfied with their purchases in general, because 42% score at 8 to 9 on a 1 to 9 scale. So they're really happy with it. However, in Australia, somehow Shopsumers seem a bit more critical when it comes to recommending their in-store experience to others. Still, a third of them would do so without hesitation. In the UK, a full 42%, as we say, of Shopsumers declare it is highly likely they would recommend their experience to a friend. France is pretty similar to Australia, although there is not as many detractors here who score only 1 to 5. So let's look at this in more detail by looking at particular categories. Some categories are somewhat more sexy than others. If we saw the average for the UK before, 42%, which is the top bar, and then you see some categories in the beverages area. Bottled water scores really well. 52% are really happy with their experience. Wine and sparkling is 50%, and then we go down to hot beverages, where it is only 42%. So overall satisfaction already varies significantly across different categories. So there is something about how well we serve that retail experience, the differentiated retail experience that people are actually wanting to experiment. Well, we have digged even deeper in the data, and then we look at the impact of different touch points, and that can vary significantly across the different categories that we looked at here. Well, now we have vertical bars, the average, as well as lager, wine and sparkling, and colas, which we picked out here. Well, pre-store planning down to a brand. So how many of the Shopsumers actually decided before entering the store what they would buy, what brand they would actually buy? Well, as you can see in wine and sparkling, they're really willing to browse in the category and look at different options that they may have. Whereas in colas, 76% have already decided what brand they are going to buy before actually entering the store. So the touch points you need to activate in the different categories have to be largely different if you really want to change your consumer's mind. In the cola category, you would have to make a great effort outside the store, whereas in wines, you can drive his shopping decision to a large extent in store. Let's look at the next slide here, which is asking the same type of Shopsumers whether they bought on promo in store. Well, actually 65% in colas bought on promo, 55% in wine and sparkling. So with a high brand planning, it does not make much sense from this top line view that we're extending here in colas to promote that so heavily in store if people have already decided, with 76%, 3/4 of all Shopsumers have already decided what brand they're going by? Why would you promote it so heavily? So probably the promotional arena here is really overloaded. Well, on the next slide, you can see vertical bars on how much of the shopping was actually planned. And there we can see that it is pretty similar. Most Shopsumers, when asked after the Shopping Act, declare that they had planned to buy the categories that end up in their shopping basket. Almost 3/4 of all shoppers in all those categories, as well as in the average, already know whether they want to buy the category or not. So category stories in general need to start way before the Shopsumer's decision to go to store, as we can see in these figures. We look at it now, we look at some examples now. So some retailers already recognize the opportunities to focus category stories correctly. Look at Shopsumer satisfaction on average here in lager, for example. So Sainsbury's are looking at how satisfied people are in store, and they have a stronger focus on good exposure in store, wider assortment and choice, and they do specific beer folders. That is what you would want to do to actually bring the planning down, as Sainsbury is doing here. Only 43% of Sainsbury's shoppers are actually saying we planned a brand beforehand, because we are quite thrilled by what we are going to see when we enter the store and go to the beer category. So that is how you can really make a difference, by offering more choice and therefore getting Shopsumers to the store without planning the brand that they are going to buy so much, because they're quite convinced that the selection will be good in store. Second example here, if we looked at bought on promo, we said that 65% on average buy on promo in colas, but at Sainsbury's and Asda, it's only 59 and 61%. So there's probably less choice in promos during the same period. They cannot buy promos on each and every brand that they were planning to buy, and promoting only specific pack sizes for non-loyal shoppers, like individual packs, so not the big family packs or multi-packs, probably makes sense to bring down that high promotion level that we saw in colas in general. Well, so much for some examples, as you can see, and some data on Shopsumer satisfaction. As you can see, the key output here was shoppers have to be reached at different touch points throughout their planning and buying journey, or the path to purchase as we call it, because categories are dealt with in a very different way by the Shopsumer. So let's come to show you a little bit on how we act in this arena through our category story sheet. Well, first of all, we need to highlight that we typically use what we call the Shopsumer activation strategy in our consulting projects. The category story sheet here needs to impact two main steps of this Shopsumer activation strategy. First of all, in the systematize point 2, we need to create that category story, and obviously in the activation point number 5, we need to have the right type of events or type of activities that we do to activate the Shopsumer. So the category story really impacts these 2 points mostly. But of course, it is also a guideline for the other steps in the Shopsumer activation strategy process. Well, let's look at how the category story impacts in systematize. Well, systematize, as we pointed out in our last session, is about the elaboration of the category story sheet. And that is selecting the key variables that you want to use to activate the category story, then defining the activation objective, and finally detailing the action plan, although this is already mostly done in step number 5. So there are 3 steps to develop that final version of the category story sheet. The selection of key variables is really about what variables of the activation variables, like the assortment, promotion, Web 2.0, whatever, are you going to use to actually activate your Shopsumer at the most appropriate touch point? Which variables are you using to emphasize, or other variables that you might have to ignore because you don't want to invest in those, as they are either occupied by your competitors or they are simply not effective enough because the investment level that would be required is too high. Well, secondly, you need to define the activation objective. So pointing out in the path to purchase where you want to make that difference, defining in what way the variable contributes to Shopsumer engagement, clarifying media, the type of variable or type of activation you want to use, as well as the message you want to send out to the Shopsumer so that he reacts to it appropriately. Detailing the action plan, as we say, we'll come to that in step 5 of the Shopsumer activation strategy. Well, let's look at step 1 here, the path to purchase at the starting point. In order to define the category story, we need to look at that path to purchase. We need to indicate the touch points a Shopsumer may be in contact with to take his purchase decision. According to the number of different Shopsumer segments, there may be several paths to purchase sometime within the same category, which may consist of different touch points frequented, different shopper types, Shopsumer types may go to visit different touch points or frequent different touch points. They may follow a different sequential order along this path to purchase, or they simply have a different level of impact. So one touch point, like for example the store, may be really relevant for some types of Shopsumers when they decide, where for others they only pick the product at the point of sale, but have taken most of the decisions beforehand, for example. So the touch point of sale is not so relevant. So first of all, we need to look at the path to purchase and understand what are really the relevant touch points and where can we actually act. Second point is to identify what are the really relevant touch points for us. The difference here is the primary objective is to identify the most relevant touch points along the path to purchase for the category, the ones that determine the purchase decision to a large extent in general. So we need to understand where are these hotspots along the path to purchase where almost every Shopsumer comes by. But as I say, this is the path to purchase looked at from the category perspective. So every Shopsumer, what he's doing, that does not necessarily mean that we have to invest with the same weight in these different touch points as we pointed out here, just as an example, 35%, 20%, and 30%. If we structured our own category story with that same weight of investment, we would probably just become somebody of the crowd. So the next step really is, and that's why we use our category story sheet to differentiate our own category story. The category story sheet in this basic version, as we show it to you here, is divided into 2 sets of variables. Right? On the left hand, we have the activation variables, 7 of them, that really indicate directly to the Shopsumer. So we're really looking at touch points that the Shopsumer is impacted by. And the other set of 7 variables as well, as we pick them here, are indirect actors in that path to purchase. So mostly, as we know, retail customers, for example, who resell our products that we may produce as a manufacturer. So it can be adapted to the category story sheet as a whole, as we show here, our very basic version, can be adapted to the specific needs of your company, category, or business sector. So there may be some other variables that may be really relevant, but there may also be influences, as we can see here in the next category story sheet. In many cases, especially if you think of pharmaceutical products, probably, doctors, pharmacists, are prescribers that are really relevant touch points in the path to purchase that have a huge influence on the Shopsumer's buying decision. So in some cases, this category story sheet needs to be adapted. The reason we use this category story sheet is really to have a comprehensive structure of the main activities that we want to do to activate our Shopsumer. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fill in all these fields here for each and every variable. Maybe some variables you want to ignore completely because it doesn't make sense to invest in them. So it's really about selecting those key activities that we want to do and thereby strengthen our unique positioning towards our competitors. So step 2, selecting the most suitable activation variables of the category story sheet. So we may say, okay, because searching information, as we pointed out in that basic, general, category-specific path to purchase, 35% in this case of people were influenced by their purchase decision was influenced by searching information. So maybe apps and search engine optimization is the right way to go because you really want to have your information from your company coming up first when Shopsumers look for specific information on the products. Secondly, you may want to have this reassurance from peers and seek expert advice, for example. Well, you may do that by training retailer personnel. They have to be the prescribers of that product, so maybe investing here is an important other activity that you may want to do in your category story. And thirdly, as we put out here as an example, assortment optimization and POS material, because the POS visit is still something really specific. So the question here is that now, for you as a company, you need to decide what levers, what activation variables you will actually use to engage with the Shopsumer. And make sure that these are different from the general approach of all competitors in this marketplace. Well, in that step 2, sometimes it may even make sense to invent a new touch point. For example, what we experimented in many categories in the recent past is manufacturers or retailers engage with their Shopsumers after their purchase to make them share their experience via apps or social networks. So according to the difficulty to differentiate along the general category path to purchase, many leading companies really try to insert additional touch points in it to provide a unique service to the Shopsumer. This means, however, that the company needs to ensure to drive traffic towards that new touch point, thus estimating and reevaluating the importance of that particular touch point for the purchase decision. It is new, so you don't know how big the impact of it will probably be in the general category path to purchase, but you are made responsible as the one who invented that touch point, you are made responsible to drive traffic towards it. Here's a little example. So Coca-Cola, for example, in Spain, created Whatsred. It's a kind of application which allows bars to communicate their activities, their little events on that platform, and you can then, as a Shopsumer, connect to that platform, key in your postcode or whatever, and you will directly get some special offers from the bars surrounding you. So it tries to drive traffic to bars for Coca-Cola and offering them a marketing platform that would connect them to users who are interested in going out to new places with special events, offers, etc. So that is inventing a new touch point, because you may have those precise bars just in front of your doorstep, but you never went there. And right now you are activated particularly by those additional that additional information that you get via the app. That takes us again to takes us back to the category story sheet, where by highlighting some of the variables that we really want to invest in, we define in that first empty column that you can see on both sides of that category story sheet, we fill in what we want to do to increase the impact of these specific activation variables. What and obviously where we're going to do it. So assortment, we want to replace obsolete SKUs immediately, for example, really taking care of having the most updated assortment in stores all the time, no matter how much it costs. In POS material, we might want to implement shelf guiding systems and POS screens so that people get more engaged or are triggered with some marketing content at the point of sale. But also, we want to invest in apps and SEO to engage more in that information search that we said was relevant in this example of the path to purchase beforehand. And then, as we said, on the retailer side or the indirect actors in the category story, we may want to train store personnel to become more familiar with our products and thereby be able to recommend those products in a better way. Well, one way to develop that category story in our consulting experience is to create a war game exercise. What we do here is, in a 2-day workshop, we create mixed teams of sales, business development, and marketing executives to represent their own as well as major competitor companies. Those teams then need to develop that category story sheet for the assigned brand or company to come up with breakthrough ideas that would help them steal a considerable part of market share away from the other teams. So putting this in a more abstract environment helps to become more differentiating in your category story. Most of the times what we experiment in these workshops is that the teams that represent competitors are much more radical in their approach to the marketplace because they have nothing to lose. They work for that specific company, but not for the competitor, so they can play it more freely. And that helps you to redefine your own category story in a much better way. So the third step then in that creation of the category story sheet is to allocate the budget to the specific activation variables that you chose beforehand. So that is filling in that third column on each side of the category story sheet by giving rough percentages, rough orientations on how much you want to spend on these different variables. You may want to differentiate, as we showed you before. We highlighted those variables where you really wanted to invest primarily, but then there may be some extra activation variables that you want to use, like placement here and the promotion, which are just framed in red, so we will use them, but we will only compete at a relatively low level with our competitors in those. So the overall budget needs to be distributed along the selected variables accordingly. This includes all the spend on variables that will not be emphasized. So obviously, you may still want to run promotions, as we said, but we will do that with shallow discounts and standard items, as pointed out here in the example, but we will only invest 10%. But obviously, the investment needs to add up to 100. So in some cases, we have to add some of the variables that we still invest in, but they are not really our primary variables to activate. And then finally, in a fourth step, we need to summarize our way of activating the Shopsumer by means of those 14 variables in that basic category story sheet that we showed you, in one sentence, which represents our unique positioning. The unique mix of activation variables that we created in that category story sheet needs to be reflected by one motto, if you like, by one credo, which is how we think that category will be growing through our activation. Building a dynamic relationship with the Shopsumer through direct interaction via app and better visibility and service in store, converting our brand into the socially responsible entity in the category. That's just an example of a positioning, obviously. But that is something that our entire organization needs to say to all their clients every day. That is the motto we need to bring forward. We need to get out to the people to understand how we think that category has to be activated in order to make it grow. Aligning the category story sheet with the entire commercial organization and customers is fundamental. So we need to involve marketing, business development, and sales executives, but we also need to involve the key account managers and sales supervisors, the sales force and the merchandisers, or maybe even third-party agents that act on behalf of our company at the different touch points. And finally, all customers and intermediaries need to understand that this is our way to bring the category forward. Practical guidelines and best practice case studies need to be created to deploy the category story sheets activation strategy. The format of a single sheet, as we said before, is fundamental to make sure each member of the organization will easily remember the category story and sets the right priorities in front of customers. That's why we talk about the category story sheet. It's really one simple single page. It contains all major guides or guidelines or strategies of our activation strategy. And that is what we have to bring forward to all the people that are involved in it, both internal as well as external. So before we finalize our presentation with some 5 golden rules on creating the right category story, I would like to organize a little poll asking you the following question here. You will see a little questionnaire coming up on your screens now. Please select one or more of the following options. How can we improve potential what are potential improvement areas of our category story? We invest similar to other competitors. That is one of the mistakes that we're making. We invest too much in promotions. We need a clear picture of the path to purchase. It's not fully understood yet. We need more synchronization of marketing and shopper marketing in our organization, or we simply lack Shopsumer insights. We cannot activate on that. Could you please vote? And then after a while, I will show you the results of your voting. Thank you for participating. Right, so most of you voted. Close the poll. Thank you very much. And you should see the results coming up right now. Well, as you can see, what most of you said is that we need a clearer picture of the path to purchase. We really don't fully understand how the Shopsumer is influenced by different touch points along his path to purchase and how he makes his purchase decision. 33% of you said more synchronization of marketing and shopper marketing would be necessary. So it's more the internal part of your organization. We're not completely coordinated. And 17% then said that we invest very similar to our competitors. That's one of the major drawbacks. We do just what is state of the art, as if you like, in the category. So thank you very much for participating, and we will now continue with our presentation by closing with the 5 golden rules that you need to obey in order to create a convincing, engaging category story. First of all, be absolutely clear about where in the path to purchase you want to compete. Be absolutely specific about what touch points are relevant for you, how you can be more efficient by selecting touch points that are not so frequented, to come back to the poll, not so frequented by your competitors. Maybe they ignore some of the touch points without them even knowing, which is the ideal case. And then you can just exploit those much better and will surely have huge economies of scale at the beginning. So be absolutely clear about where in the path to purchase you want to compete. A little bit everywhere is not the right decision. Secondly, ask yourself whether the category's path to purchase is a given or whether you can change it. We always have that little motto: good companies know exactly where to invest along the path to purchase. Great companies change it. You really drive how the Shopsumer selects or takes consecutive decision to select his ideal product. If you can influence that search process, you invent new touch points, that is a great start for a unique category story. Ask yourself whether that category's path to purchase is a given or whether you can change it. Third point, go for clear over or under investment in the activation variables and touch points. Avoid by all means to invest at the same level as your competitors, or invest just proportionally to your market share. So if you're 10% of the entire market, 10% of your of the total investment in TV advertising, for example, has to be done by you. Well, that's not the right way in growing a category, really. If you just follow the flow, if you follow the crowd, you will just get the same result that you got beforehand. Fourth, involve and challenge your entire organization on the category story to be more aligned. Everyone needs to participate in it. And precisely in that area, you need to point out, as we did in our last session, that the evaluation of the Shopsumer impact that you're going to reach with your activation plan, with your category story sheet, needs to be done by your own people, by your sales force, by your sales reps, by merchandisers. They need to evaluate how well you were doing. Not only do you have to look at the financial data, turnover, and profitability, you also need to look at that Shopsumer impact. Did we really make a difference? Did it change the Shopsumer's mindset about our brand? That's the question you need to ask to your people that are out there closest to the Shopsumer every day. Involve and challenge your entire organization on the category story to be more aligned. Are we really sure that this is the way to go forward? And finally, contrast your category story with the route to market model to see whether it needs changing. Sometimes we see organization charts remaining exactly the same, but we changed our priorities along the path to purchase to different touch points. Well, that is good. But if your organization doesn't change, if you still have the same sales reps going to the same clients, nothing will really happen. You need to make sure that you want to maybe create new people. A good example of this is some brands in the spirits industry call them brand ambassadors. People that just go around to bars, to restaurants, and talk about the brand, but they're not really selling anything. They're just making you more familiar with the brand. So that's probably a position of a person that comes out of a reflection on the category story, and then you eventually decided to also change your route to market model by using different kinds of functions in your organization. So that was it for today. Thanks for listening. Please do not hesitate to contact us. There's phone numbers here. There is our email. You can go to our website, contact us via our website. You will get a presentation, a PDF file of that presentation after the webinar. So thank you very much for attending. I hope this was useful to you, and please ask a question. You can use the chat box in the control panel of GoToMeeting that you have on your screen to raise some questions, and I will try to answer those within the next 5 to 10 minutes. But please also feel free to contact us via email, via telephone, to ask for further information. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you soon. Well, there's one interesting question here about the advertising in general. Why didn't we include advertising in the category story sheet? Well, to specify that, typically when we look at Shopsumer marketing, as we call it, we take product and the surrounding services as a given. So we don't really look at how you need to position yourself in above the line media. It's not really that important from our point of view because that really doesn't change much. However, in some cases, variables like packaging, for example, may influence the Shopsumer's decision making at the point of sale. Right? It may have an impact on his choices between two competing brands, for example, and therefore, in that case, packaging may enter the category story sheet because it makes a difference for the decision-making process. Right? Whereas, on the other hand, take flour, for example. Flour is typically packed in a paper bag, 1 kilo, and all flours are the same. So in that case, packaging as such is not a difference. It doesn't make a difference on the Shopsumer's decision, unless you want to influence that touch point of packaging by creating a completely new story around the packaging of flour, for example. Well, that is an option that you may want to choose. And in that case, obviously, the variable packaging needs to go into the category story. As I said, same for advertising. Advertising, if you think it really influences the Shopsumer's decision making, then advertising needs to go into the category story sheet. But if you think that this is just information about your product to create recognition, brand awareness, well, then it probably doesn't make a difference to what extent you invest in that particular activation variable, because it will not change the Shopsumer's mindset necessarily. So you really need to specify your path to purchase to find out what variables, what activation variables need to go into the category story sheet. Well, once again, thanks very much for joining us. We'll leave it here because there are no more questions. Thank you for joining us and look forward to meeting you soon. Bye.